29th session of the Senate in the first regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Franklin Drilon will lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you for the new day as we, your servants, gather once again and work together in the service of our countrymen. Dear Lord, grant us your light and understanding to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. Lead us by your wisdom, strengthen us by your power, and guide us by the abiding presence of your Holy Spirit as we fulfill our mandate as elected leaders of this country. Help us to remain faithful to our sworn duty of upholding the Constitution in promoting the common good of all. O gracious God, give us the courage to always be fair in our decisions and do what is morally right. Enable us to uphold the rights of everyone. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. May you serve as our greatest reminder that our compassion should not only be for the chosen few, but for all who are in need. All these we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator Drilon. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gasalian, Gordon, Honasan, Hontiveros, Lacson, Ligada, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zuberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 21 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 28th session, Monday, October 3, 2016, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to acknowledge some guests in the gallery visiting the Senate today. We have the constitutional law students from the Philippine Law School headed by their class president, Eva Villaruel. And students in the masteral program of Asian Social Institute headed by Ms. Zinia Cariasa Arsenio, Vice President for Academe Research and Dean. Also, visitors of Senator Aquino, the barangay officials delegation from Nagcarlan, Laguna, and guests of Senator Hontiveros, the entire Philippine contingent for the ship of Southeast Asian and Japanese Youth Program, led by National Leader Attorney Khalil Lamigo, and guests of Senator Gatchalian, Mayor Ronald Goles of Dumangas, Iloilo. We'd like to welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of our guests. Welcome to the Philippine Senate.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Bills on first reading, Senate Bill number 1173, an act requiring owners and or operators of malls, department stores, stalls, and similar establishments to grant and allow their women employees assigned in sales 15-minute rests every 2 hours of continuous and uninterrupted sales and store operation assignments, amending for this purpose Section 132A, Chapter 1, Title 2 of the Labor Code of the Philippines by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
Referred to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
1174, an act granting public elementary school students free admission to all public museums and national historical shrines and landmarks by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture.
1175, an act establishing and providing for free college education in information and communications technology in state universities and colleges, and appropriating funds, therefore, by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
1176, an act mandating higher education institutions and technical vocational institutions to ensure the safety and security of the academic community from internal and external threats, thereby creating a crime prevention committee for this purpose and for other purposes. Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
1177, an act declaring the Balangay as the national boat of the Philippines by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture.
Resolution number 174, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the apparent mismanagement and or incompetence of the National Bilibid Prison by the Bureau of Corrections and the Philippine National Police, leading to a brawl that caused the death of a high-profile inmate and serious physical injuries to others, and the alleged human rights violations committed against other inmates, with the end in view of enacting remedial legislation that would prevent recurrence of similar incidents by Senators Laila de Lima and Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
175, recognizing and commending Gislyn Santos for being crowned as the Miss United Continents 2016. Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
176, resolution recognizing and commending Arthur Villanueva for successfully defending the WBO Asia Pacific Bantamweight belt in Carson, California by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
177, resolution recognizing and commending Perlas, Pilipinas, for winning the gold medal during the Southeast Asian Basketball Association Women's Championship in Malacca, Malaysia by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
178, resolution recognizing and congratulating Janelle May Fraina for being granted the title of Chess Grandmaster in the 42nd World Chess Olympiad held at Baco, Azerbaijan by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
180, resolution congratulating and commending Executive Minister Eduardo V. Manalo for 7 years of dynamic and successful leadership of the Iglesia ni Cristo by Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications. Letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act Number 7653, circular letter numbers CL 2016075 and 076 dated 5 and 8 September 2016, circular numbers 924 and 925 dated 7 and 13 September 2016, and memorandum number M2016012 dated 8 September 2016.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Additional reference to business message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 28 September 2016, it adopted House Concurrent Resolution Number 8, entitled Concurrent Resolution Granting Consent to Senator Franklin M. Drilon to accept the Grand Cordon of Order of the Rising Sun to be conferred upon him by the Government of Japan, in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate.
To the Committee on Rules.
Bills on first reading. Senate Bill Number 1178, an act amending Section 13 of Republic Act Number 7166, otherwise known as an act providing for synchronized national and local elections and for electoral reforms, authorizing appropriations therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
1179, an act extending the validity of Philippine passport, amending for the purpose Section 10 of RA number 8239, also known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996 by Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committee on Foreign Relations.
1180, an act declaring a one-time amnesty for unpaid Social Security System contributions, inclusive of fees, fines, penalties, interest, and other additions thereto, by employers of house helpers under Republic Act Number 7655, otherwise known as an act increasing the minimum wage of house helpers, amending for the purpose Article 143 of Presidential Decree 442 as amended, and Republic Act Number 10361, otherwise known as an act instituting policies for the protection and welfare of domestic workers and for other purposes by Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution Number 183, directing the Senate Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Yolanda Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Program, specifically on the resettlement program with the end in view of crafting laws, rules, and regulations for an effective and efficient housing programs for victims of disaster by Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement.
184, a resolution expressing the sense of the Senate that the proposal to show the alleged sex video attributed to Senator Laila de Lima is illegal, violative of inter-parliamentary courtesy and decency, and an affront to women's dignity by Senators Risa Ontiveros, Cynthia A. Villar, Grace Poe, Maria Lourdes Nancy Esbinayan Ligarda.
Committee on Rules.
185, resolution extolling the heroism and virtues of World War II martyr Wenceslao Q. Vinsons on occasion of his 106th birth anniversary by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, we also would like to welcome to the Senate the guests of Senator Zubiri, Maryland State Congresswoman Chris Valderrama, California State Congressman Rob Bonta, Tony Olaez, the CEO of the Filipino School San Diego, Juanito Amor Jr., the Registered Voters County of San Diego, Mr. Odi De Castro, Honorary Consul, and Al Talahuro, all visitors of Senator Zubiri, and also guests of Senator Legarda from the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, Chair Leonor Quintayo, Commissioner Basilio Wandag, Commissioner Norberto Navarro, Commissioner Ramsey Astovesa, Commissioner Roy Dabuit, Commissioner Dominador Gomez, and Executive Director Lee Arroyo, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, to speak on a matter of public interest, may we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senator Ontiveros is recognized to speak on a matter of public interest.
Mr. President, I rise on a point of personal and collective privilege. I rise as Senate Chair of the Committee on Women, as a senator, but most importantly as a woman. Last Thursday, during the committee hearing for the budget of the Commission on Human Rights, I was jolted by news of the passing of Miriam Defensor Santiago. Senator Miriam was many things to many people. To those with whom she crossed swords, they would likely remember her sharp, unrelenting tongue. To her family and close friends, she was a loving wife and mother. To the millennials of this country, her biting wit and pickup lines are the stuff legends are made of. To her supporters from various generations, she was, and I quote, the best president we never had, close quote. To me, Mr. President, I choose to remember her as an ally and fellow traveler in our long struggle for reproductive health. In her, I saw the tenacity required to shepherd important and historic legislation to fruition. And with her, as well as the legions of women advocates, I saw the importance of the women's voice in pushing policy. Because love her or hate her, one thing is certain. Miriam Defensor Santiago was a woman who made sure her voice was heard. She paved the way for women like me who believed that there was a glass ceiling that needed to be broken, an old boys club that needed to be penetrated, because this club sought to make decisions about our bodies, our health, our lives, and our futures without our consent. In this club, women are either outsiders who must request to get in, objects of spectacle whose existence and agency are defined according to the men in their lives, or recipients of tokenist favors. Buhay na buhay pa din, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ang Old Boys Club sa gobyerno. This Old Boys Club phenomenon is alive and kicking. At its most benign, it can manifest itself in statements like, "Of course, I will yield to the beautiful senator." Then it can progress to catcalling and rape jokes. Sa bagay, Mr. President, hindi lang ito sa Pilipinas. In America, their male presidential candidate just called a woman Miss Piggy. At its worst and ugliest, this Old Boys Club in the Philippines seeks to shame a woman senator into silence by threatening the release of a video purported to capture her in a sexual act. Now, the Justice Secretary says, quote, "We are not going to present anything about the sex video. We are not in possession of any video," close quote. Mr. President, we have yet to hear from the House of Representatives if they indeed will cease and desist from this threatened assault on a fellow legislator. The victory will be of the netizens, women writers, women representatives, and women senators who said enough. Whether you think the video is fake or not is of no moment. What you think of the drug-related allegations leveled against her is of no moment. Isang usapin lang po ang inilalatag ko sa inyong harapan ngayon, Mr. President. Will we allow the House of Representatives to show the sex video allegedly showing Senator Laila de Lima? In the first place, the release of the video would be illegal. It would be in violation of Republic Act 9995 or the Anti-Photo or Video Voyeurism Act of 2009, which requires the consent of the person or persons in the video before its release or distribution. The House Speakership and its Committee on Justice would be party to the commission of a crime under RA 9995. It would be, for all intents and purposes, a sex crime. Do we allow our colleagues in the House to be party to a sex crime? Do we allow a fellow senator to be the victim of a sex crime? But, Mr. President, the legality or illegality of it is not the core issue that I want to get to. It is the systemic and structural machismo that pervades our political culture. The double standards that are so ingrained in our life that they become invisible tools of oppression. Sa pag-iit ng opinyon, pag lalaki, assertive and decisive. Sinasabi ng lipunan, take a bow. Pag babae, hysterical and shrill. Sinasabi ng lipunan, take a break. Sa pag-abante ng career, pag lalaki, go-getter. Pag babae, bad mother. Kaya naman, pag ang lalaki may sex video, macho, matinik. Pag babae, malaswa, malandi. Mr. President, we could still be about to cross the Rubicon if we stand by in silence while our colleagues in the House perpetrate this indignity against a fellow senator. We would have chosen vulgarity over civility, misogyny over basic respect and decency. We would be telling our daughters that they can be shamed for their sexuality in ways that their brothers or future husbands or partners will never be. We would be telling our little girls that their sexual choices are fair game and that their bodies can be policed. Sinong susunod? Sinong susunod na gagawa ng peking sex video? Sinong susunod na hihiyain sa madla? Ako, si Senator Nancy, si Senator Grace, si Senator Cynthia, o si Senator Loren? O ang babaeng iniwan ang nambubugbog na partner at bilang ganti ay in-upload ang sex video nila? Kasi pwede na. Sabi ng Kongreso, pwede. Mr. President, Senator Laila has her political battles, and many of you might disagree with her positions. So be it. But on the singular issue of the sex video, the battle is bigger than Senator Laila. It is about respect and decency between institutions. It is about chipping away at the structural misogyny that pervades our culture. Most of all, it is about raising little girls who believe that they can define themselves with no fear of shame, and who believe that their bodies and their lives are theirs and theirs alone. This is not just about Senator Laila. This is about every woman. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rontiveros. With the permission of the body, a minute suspension. Last majority. May interplate yata si Bak. Ha? Pwede? Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to interpolate the distinguished lady from Akbayan, we would like to recognize Senator Bam Aquino.
Senator Aquino is recognized.
Mr. President, magandang hapon. Will the lady from Akbayan yield to a few questions?
Gladly, Mr. President.
First of all, Mr. President, I'm quite pleased with the speech of Senator Ontiveros. A number of us had voiced our concern and our objection to the playing of that supposed sex video in Congress. Let me begin by asking about the hashtag. The hashtag is every woman. Maybe you can elucidate, Senator Ontiveros, bakit every woman po yung naging hashtag na ginagamit sa issue na ito?
Mr. President, yung hashtag na yon, yung naging isang battle cry o battle axe nung mga netizens na on a certain day last week, kumbaga napuno na ang salok nila. Sabi talaga nila, sobra na. Tama na, tigilin na ito. And they came up, at first it was women on the net, but men, like the good senator, joined in, adding hashtag every man, and then various other netizens joined in with an additional hashtag every human. So na ang mensahe po niyan, Mr. President, is also what I just expressed, that this issue of an alleged sex video is not only about a single senator or single legislator. It's at its very core a human issue, a human dignity, a human rights issue. It has to do with the dignity of every woman. Women who are trying to speak the truth of our own lives, women who, in various aspects of our lives, are seeking justice for the issues that are important to us. So, hindi ino-own ng isang individual lang yung ganitong advocacy against sexism and against misogyny. It is an eminently human struggle.
Hence, the usage of the word every.
Every.
So lahat po pwedeng mabiktima ng gantong karahasan. It is a form of violence.
It is really a form of violence, even under the Women in Nation Building Act and other national laws and international instruments that the Philippines has either passed in Congress or is party to in the Community of Nations, Mr. President.
And Mr. President, ito pong paggamit ng sex video or sexual information para mang-oppress ng iba o para mag-revenge, hindi naman ho ito unique sa sitwasyon natin. This is actually done in many societies, even in the Philippines, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, indeed, this kind of assault from the platform of sexism and misogyny is not unique to the Philippines, not unique to this particular situation, so much so that the Philippine Congress saw it fit to pass various laws to protect women or all persons from such psychological violence. I mentioned, for example, Republic Act 9995, the Anti-Photo or Video Voyeurism Act. There are also various provisions, articles under the revised penal code. There is, as I mentioned, the Magna Carta of Women. There are city ordinances in different parts of the country which would categorize such an act or such the threat of an act as psychological violence and a violation of the rights of women.
Mr. President, it's not unique to Philippine society, but it seems that this type of action or violence or oppression seems to be unique to women. Parang di po ako nakakita ng galit po sa lalaki na gagamitin ang gantong klaseng karahasan. Is that right, Madam Senator?
Unfortunately, Mr. President, as in all cases of violence against women that are classified under different Philippine laws, unfortunately, in all of these cases of violence, women are indeed the majority of the victims. We are the overwhelming majority of victims of these kinds of violations.
Why is that, Mr. President? Bakit po sa babae po nakafocus ang gantong klaseng karahasan?
Mr. President, sa babae po nakafocus ang ganitong klaseng karahasan precisely because of the sexist and misogynistic character still in year 2016 of Philippine society. We have a culture, despite many advances born out of the struggles of the women's movements, including some support from some fellow men at different stages of history, still overwhelmingly the privileging of the male sex, the privileging of male characteristics of human beings as demonstrated whether through reproductive functions or through differences in social and cultural behaviors. If there is that kind of built-in inequality in our society as expressed in our culture, and as this culture comes out in the different institutions of our society, even of our government, then it is no surprise, though it is a terrible surprise, that still there is a high incidence of violence against women, various forms of violence against women, and as the title would suggest, the majority of victims of these kinds of violence would be women.
Mr. President, Madam Senator, ito pong currently, today, if the headlines are correct, it seems Congress is not pushing through anymore with showing of that alleged sex video. A number of groups came out, individuals, cross-party, lumabas po to state their objection to this act. I'm sure a lot of the women's groups were elated or were quite happy that this happened.
Mr. President, as far as I know, we have heard from the Justice Secretary that now he says they are not in possession of such a video. Now he says they are not going to screen any such video. But as I mentioned in my speech, we have yet to hear from the House of Representatives whether they will in fact cease and desist from their earlier expressed intention to show such a video.
All right, and Senator Ontiveros, the lady senators have actually filed a resolution
Yes.
on this issue. Maybe you could elucidate further, Mr. President. We can ask Senator Ontiveros to tell us more about this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. The resolution, which was just read on the floor by the good majority leader, was signed by all the rest of the 5 of us women senators in our chamber. It notes that our sister Senator Laila de Lima is the subject of an ongoing investigation in the House, that there has been a push on the part of some representatives to show that alleged sex video. We noted in our resolution that showing such a video would be in violation of the Anti-Photo or Video Voyeurism Act, that further it would violate a long-standing and cherished tradition of extending interparliamentary courtesy across the line of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And most importantly, we said in our resolution that such an act would undermine our lifelong torturous struggle to uphold and uplift the dignity of women. And so we called upon our good chamber to express the sense of the Senate that we strongly oppose and condemn such an act contemplated by our fellow legislators in the House.
Mr. President, I commend, of course, the lady senators for taking the lead on this resolution, and I will be very supportive of this resolution when the time comes. Mr. President, that's all of my questions for Senator Ontiveros. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Senator. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. President,
What's the pleasure of Senator Drilon?
If the lady will yield to a few questions,
Okay. So Senator Drilon is recognized for interpellation.
will the lady from Capiz yield to a few questions?
Gladly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, this is my 19th year in the Senate, and this is the first time that our Congress is confronted with the situation just described on the record by Senator Ontiveros. We all know that under our Constitution, investigations in Congress are done in aid of legislation. And therefore, witnesses appear not as an accused, but as resource persons in order to clarify certain issues and in order to aid the legislators in crafting laws for the common good, for the good of our country, and for purposes of finding out how else we can amend certain laws that are in the books. That is why we have resource persons. Now, in this particular case, may I know if the lady, if Senator Ontiveros is aware of the legislation ought to be enacted by showing this alleged sex video?
Mr. President, in fact, I do not know of any apparent or even expressed subject in terms of a law that is supposed to be examined for oversight of its implementation in the threatened showing of this alleged video in the course of the House investigation of our colleague, Mr. President.
And if I recall correctly, our colleague from Capiz was in the House of Representatives for 9 years before coming here in the Senate.
For 6 years, Mr. President.
For 6 years. Was there any instance when you were in the House, Mr. President, that you were confronted with a situation where the Justice Secretary and the Chair of the Committee on Justice and the Speaker of the House in unison says, we will show this video?
Never, Mr. President. Never also have I seen a secretary conduct hearings in the House of Representatives. So there was, in a way, a shock upon shock in observing the goings-on now around this alleged sex video.
So that you absolutely see no relation whatsoever between any pretended legislation and this purported sex video to be necessary in order to come up with any legislation that is supposed to be enacted?
The only expressed intent I've heard, Mr. President, for the investigation as a whole is to look into certain allegations regarding activities within the New Bilibid prisons, but nothing that I can understand as a fellow legislator that would be impacted by the showing of an alleged sex video.
So what in the view of Mr. President, of our colleague, is the purpose of showing this video?
If I would be so bold as to guess, Mr. President, I'm afraid that the only purpose of threatening to show an alleged sex video, which the supposed subject has already said is not her, and which persons who have watched the video said is not her, is to shame and humiliate, and in fact, over the past few months, batter her into silence in violation of her duties as a fellow legislator, of the legislators who were publicly speaking about this intention. Not at all, Mr. President, in aid of legislation, and certainly I don't think in the highest traditions of the Congress of our Republic, whether the House of Representatives or the Senate.
What do you think should the Senate do under these circumstances, given the fact that our colleague is being subjected to this kind of pressure, harassment that you have just mentioned, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, we, 5 other women members of this chamber, already took a step together yesterday, as I saw it, crossing party lines, putting front and center our sisterhood and solidarity as women and as senators to appeal to the Senate, to express the sense of the Senate that on the grounds I mentioned earlier, we oppose and we would strongly condemn any move by the House of Representatives to show such an alleged sex video.
Just a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President, where was the resolution referred to, if it was?
Committee on Rules just today, Mr. Senator Dillon.
Mr. President, may I, yes, I will concur with the answer of the Senate President. It was referred to the Committee on Rules. As a matter of fact, for the information of everyone, before Senator Hontiveros stood up to rise on a point of personal privilege or of public interest, I approached the Senate President and discussed with the Senate President the possibility of reporting out the committee or the resolution now. We just were waiting for her to finish with her privilege speech, Mr. President.
In view of that manifestation, we now terminate our interpellation, given the fact that the Majority Leader, as Chairman of the Committee on Rules, manifested that they're going to come out with a ruling on this resolution, and we can just raise questions, if any, when that appropriate, when the Majority Leader would sponsor that resolution on the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Salamat gid to my fellow Ilonggo Senator. Thank you so much, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, can I suspend and ask the Senator Drilon to preside, because I want to also interpellate the good senator. So, with the
Yes.
permission of the body, let's a minute suspension.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
May we recognize the Senate President, Senator Aquilino Pimentel III, Mr. President.
The Senate President is recognized for the period of interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Will the good lady senator yield to a few questions?
Certainly, Mr. President.
Thank you. The subject matter of your speech, Madam Senator, is PS Resolution number 184, which was just referred to the Committee on Rules this afternoon. So I'm sure a lot of us have not had the chance to read the body of the resolution. You cite 3 reasons why the Senate should express its sense that the alleged sex video should not be shown. So one is, it is illegal. Number 2, violative of interparliamentary courtesy and decency, and an affront to women's dignity.
Yes, Mr. President.
I have here Republic Act number 9995, and in your speech you cited, what section did you cite?
I refer, especially, Mr. President, to Section 4, letter D of Republic Act number 9995, entitled Prohibited Acts.
Yes. But I'd like to bring our attention to Section 7 also of the same law, making the recording or the video recording inadmissible as evidence, even in a legislative hearing or investigation. So I think that should be an additional ground to argue for the illegality of the contemplated act of Congress. I just want
Thank
to
you,
be,
Mr. President. Will do.
but I want to be educated more on why it would be violative of interparliamentary courtesy.
Thank you, Mr. President. It would be violative of interparliamentary courtesy because, as I learned when I was working in the House of Representatives, and as I continue to learn here now in the Senate, there is that institutional courtesy across the divide between the House of Representatives and the Senate among fellow legislators, all of whom are supposed to be working in harmony or in principal disagreement with each other in order to craft a policy framework for our country. A policy framework that will advance various goods, including human dignity, human equality, and gender equality. Therefore, such an act, which is so obviously springing from sexism and misogyny, which would undermine our efforts to uplift the dignity of women and the equality among women and men of different sexual orientations and gender identities, would set it back. It would be an action totally opposed to the spirit of, in fact, the values enshrined in our Constitution, Mr. President.
When, during the earlier interpellation, you discussed the lack of subject matter in aid of legislation of the House committee conducting the investigation, did we also not violate interparliamentary courtesy?
Well, if I did, Mr.
When we are now questioning now the motive of a fellow of a committee of the other chamber of the Congress.
If I have done so, Mr. President, I am willing to stand corrected. And even as I stand corrected, I will still fight for a recognition on the part of our colleagues in the House of Representatives of the courtesy they owe to not just our colleague, but their colleague in the Congress of the Republic.
So I think the better attitude is for us to accept the declaration of a committee of the House that their investigation is in aid of legislation, out of courtesy.
Mr. President, I would be willing to do that if they could indeed point out that the conduct of their investigation, not the investigation per se, but this conduct of threatening to show an alleged video is in aid of legislation, except also for the fact, Mr. President, and may I thank the good Senator Pangilinan for reminding me, Rule 34 of our rules, entitled Unparliamentary Acts and Language, under Section 93 provides, and I quote, "acts and language which offend the senator or any public institution shall be deemed unparliamentary." So perhaps we would still be within our rights as a Senate, as one of the houses of the Congress of the Republic, to remind the House of Representatives not to engage in such acts and language offensive to a senator or any public institution, Mr. President.
Actually, I believe that there is no video. There is no actual video. Some have shown me a video, but it does not involve any member of the Senate. It is a video. It is a sex video, but it does not involve any member of the Senate. So there is no video. And during their last hearing, before their last hearing, they also hyped the showing of a video. And what did they show? They showed the Gangs of the World video. It's correct that they showed a video, but it was about this documentary on the gangs of the world. At any rate, Mr. President, Madam Senator, I think it's also in our rules that the Committee on Rules can immediately act on your proposed Senate resolution, because I am in favor of expressing the sense of the Senate that showing that alleged sex video is illegal. I am for the legality. But just for the information of everyone, the Speaker has categorically stated to me that no such video will be shown in the hearing, I think on Thursday. So even though the answer makes the resolution moot and academic, I will leave it up to the body if we want to pass the resolutions to guide future actions, future issues concerning this alleged sex video. But my personal belief is that there is no such video.
Mr. President, if indeed there is no such video, if indeed, as the Justice Secretary just this afternoon said, we are not in possession of any such video, we will not show any such video, well and good. But 2 points, Mr. President. I'm glad that in a way the Senate President has been prophetic in his recent statements, because the Senate President himself said previously that there would be a political price to pay if the video is shown, which I was proud to associate myself with as a member of the Senate under the Senate President. Secondly, Mr. President, I have 3 points on this, Mr. President. Secondly, the mere threat of showing such an alleged sex video in order, out of sexism and misogyny, to silence a fellow legislator is already inherently unparliamentary. And for me, as a humble member of this chamber, deserves a word from us to the other house. And last but not the least, Mr. President, because of this, and I thank, salamat kaayo to Senate President for associating himself with the issue of legality that we women senators raised in our resolution. Therefore, such a resolution and such an issue can never be moot and academic. Every time sexism or misogyny raises its head against any woman or any girl, whether in our families and homes, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our institutions, and we too, the Senate, are a workplace, and of course, one of the most prestigious institutions of our land, we have to call it for what it is. And we have to tell off those who speak from a position of power and abuse it, not to undermine sexism and misogyny, but to further ingrain it in our society and our culture, and make it that much more difficult for women and girls, and for men and boys who are trying to liberate our society from this terrible aspect of our society, that much more difficult. Thank you, Mr. President.
And as the president of PDP Laban, I made it a party directive to the party mates in the House. Should it be put to a vote, they should vote against the showing of the video.
Daghang salamat, Senate
So
President.
I think this is there will be no showing of any video on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. President.
But I thank you for also introducing this concept of interparliamentary courtesy, because this is not a fixed concept. So I would just like to take this opportunity to encourage everyone to read up on this subject matter so we can understand better what is this concept of interparliamentary courtesy and when it is properly invoked. So thank you very much.
I will do
Senator
so
Ontiveros. Thank you,
also,
Mr.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
One last addition, Mr. President. Just the threat of violence is damaging just as the actual violence is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Mr. President. Your Honor,
Senator Ejercito is recognized.
yes, Your Honor, allow me to commend Our Lady Senators today for standing up for what I also believe is an affront to women's rights and dignity. May I just make a manifestation? I won't interpolate. May I briefly manifest that I'm fully against the showing of an alleged sex video of our colleague, Senator Laila De Lima, at the ongoing investigation in Congress. As I said earlier, it is in violation of the Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act of 2009. But more than the violation of this law, interparliamentary courtesies and fairness dictate that we respect the rights and dignity of our fellow men, especially women, even if they have been proven guilty. Senator De Lima's guilt has yet to be proven in the said investigation. I urge our colleagues in Congress to heed our call for interparliamentary courtesy and be respectful at all times in our quest for truth and justice. Let this august body remain the stalwarts of decency, reason, empathy, compassion, and everything that we have sworn to do and protect to make humanity thrive. We are waging a war against drugs and criminality, not against our women, and especially not against our very own humanity. After all, we are men. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay kayo, Mr. President.
Senator Subiri, with the permission of Senator Subiri.
If it's all right with the majority floor leader. Yeah, Mr. President, as a matter of fact, we'd like to put on record that last night we were together with Senator Sherwin, Senator Joel, Senator Sani, and Senator JV. We were going to come up with an open letter to the House of Representatives appealing to them, being former members of the House, and to show interparliamentary courtesy. At the same time, for appealing to their decency and civility for all women of the world. That we all have children, and I have a daughter, and that we don't want this to show that we are condoning such acts of uncivilized behavior. And unfortunately today, fortunately the speaker had come out and saying that they were not going to anymore show the video, so we were not able to get together and sign the letter. But to show solidarity with our women legislators, we were already planning it last night to show support to this, to our chamber and to the women of the Philippines and the women of the world, that we still will fight for dignity and civility, Mr. President. Being also former members, the tables can be turned. And if the tables are turned, we also should show our dignity and civility as a chamber to fellow members of an equal chamber, which is the House of Representatives. I would just like to put that on record, Mr. President. Thank you. And we support the resolution. We have our vote.
Daghang salamat, Mr. President, and to all of you, thank you very much.
Senator Pangilinan, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Yes, just a manifestation, Mr. President. Mr. President, last Tuesday, members of the Liberal Party in the Senate issued a statement opposing the showing of the video as being illegal and so contrary to law, as well as contrary to the basic principles of parliamentary courtesy, among others. We're very happy, Mr. President, that it is now a bipartisan or multi-partisan commitment, Mr. President, and therefore we just wanted to place that on record, that we appreciate our colleagues in the Senate standing by what we believe to be necessary, not to protect one of our own, but to uphold, really, one, parliamentary courtesy as a hallowed tradition in Congress, and two, of course, our concern about women and respect for women in general. So, for the record, Mr. President, we just wanted that manifested.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I mentioned earlier, as early as the time this was being read into the records, I already asked the Senate President and the other members of the Committee on Rules on the subject matter. I brought it up because for the information of everyone, just in case you didn't know, my mother is one of the founders of the women's rights movement in the Philippines, and also the President Emerita of Kababaihang Rizalista. That is why I was brought up well by a woman. I think so, Mr. President. So, with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 184.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, PS Resolution number 184 is in order.
Maraming salamat
May we
po,
ask
mga
the Secretary to read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the complete or the entire text of the resolution.
A resolution expressing the sense of the Senate that the proposal to show the alleged sex video attributed to Senator Laila de Lima is illegal, violative of inter-parliamentary courtesy and decency, and an affront to women's dignity.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Senator Ontiveros has expressed her her mind and the perspective on this particular resolution already, and I know for a fact that we will be having a unanimous consent to the resolution. So, may we recognize Senator
Senator
Dillon?
Dillon is recognized.
Mr. President, the resolution is not very long. And in fact, the Senate President has asked me earlier whether I have read it or not. Maybe just for the record, may we propose that we read the entire resolution, as it will not take more than 3 minutes for the Secretary to read it.
Majority Leader.
The Secretariat, Mr. President, may we request the Secretariat to read the resolution, the entire text of the resolution.
If there is no objection, the Secretary is directed to read the entire text of the resolution.
Whereas Senator Laila de Lima is the subject of a House investigation on her alleged involvement in drug-related activities at the Bilibid Penitentiary, whereas some members of the House of Representatives are pushing for the showing of a video allegedly depicting the senator in acts of sexual nature, whereas showing this video violates Republic Act 9995 or the Anti-Photo or Video Voyeurism Act of 2009 and Republic Act 4200 or the Anti-Wiretapping Law, whereas it violates the time-honored principle of inter-parliamentary courtesy, given that Senator de Lima is a sitting senator and should therefore not be subjected to the ridicule and ignominy of a purported sex video, whereas, most importantly, it is a blow to our collective struggle to uplift the dignity of the woman, respect her agency and her autonomy over her own body, and is a form of slut-shaming that will not set a good example for the country. Now, therefore, be it resolved, as it is hereby resolved, to express the sense of the Senate to condemn and oppose in the strongest possible terms the proposal to show the alleged sex video in the congressional probe at the House of Representatives. Senator Ana Teresa Risa Ontiveros and other signatories.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I move that all members of the Senate be made the co-authors of the resolution?
There is a motion to make all members of the Senate present today as co-authors. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
With that, Mr. President, I think the message of the message of the Senate is the same message that Senator Pacquiao always receives in the ring: no hitting below the belt. Maybe recognize Senator.
Senator De
Laila
Lima is
Lima.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In all sincerity and humility, I wish to express my profound appreciation to my dear colleagues for this gesture. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Senator De Lima.
Mr. President, with that, I move to adopt PS Resolution 184, subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 184 is adopted subject to style.
Thank you. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Sani Angara to speak on a matter of public interest.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senator Angara is recognized to speak on a matter of public interest.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise today in response to what has been going on in and out of the halls of the Senate. In my 12 years as a legislator, I do not recall ever rising to respond to current events. Maraming beses po tayo tumayo para mag-sponsor ng panukalang batas o ng committee report o ng resolusyon. Pero ngayon lang po tayo tumayo para magkomento sa mga kasalukuyang pangyayari sa labas, pati na rin sa loob ng Senado, partikular na sa loob ng Justice Committee. Mr. President, the Senate is not an institution of our own invention. Mula nung panahon ng ninuno natin, meron na pong Senado. Nung panahon ng ancient Rome at Greece, ang Senado ay dapat tumayong konseho ng mga dalubhasa, mga nakakaalam, mga eksperto, ang tinatawag na Council of Wise Men. As we celebrate the Senate's 100th year tomorrow, may we remember that the people have traditionally looked up to the Senate in times of difficulty, as a check on dictatorial tendencies, as a prober of anomalies in government, as a voice for the unlearned and the oppressed who have nowhere to turn to for counsel. The Senate has produced many of the country's finest men and women, men like Ninoy Aquino, father of our last president and the uncle of our hardworking colleague, the gentleman from Tarlac. Men like Jovito Salonga, Lorenzo Tañada, and Jose Diokno, who fought for democracy and for freedom. Men who thought and planned big, men who dreamed big dreams, men who built institutions. Just the other week, we lost the lady from Iloilo, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Mr. President, deliberative bodies have existed practically since time immemorial and will no doubt continue to exist long after all of us here have turned to dust. Inherent in the power to legislate is the power to investigate, Mr. President. Kaakibat ng ating mandato bilang Senado na magbalangkas ng batas ay ang kapangyarihang magpatawag ng mga pagdinig para magabayan tayo sa paglikha ng mga makabuluhang batas. Legislative inquiries such as those before the Justice Committee to look into alleged extrajudicial killings no doubt serve a purpose. And to this representation, that purpose can only be to first find ways to improve law enforcement and our justice system. Our colleague, Senator Lacson, as a former police chief and having come from the ranks, said that he knows and understands the psyche of the police. He knows their frustrations over a flawed judicial system with unsympathetic, sometimes corrupt prosecutors. I was encouraged yesterday by the line of questioning of our minority leader, Senator Ralph Recto, and my seatmate, Senator Joel Villanueva, where they sought to elicit information regarding the weaknesses in law enforcement and the dispensation of justice. And more importantly, perhaps, they sought to provide solutions. Mr. President, one purpose of these investigations is also to strengthen, or must be also to strengthen the rule of law and respect for the law. A civilized country must train its law enforcers properly to have respect for basic rights and for due process. Mr. President, I do suspect that there is a great temptation to exact swift justice on the part of our law enforcers, given the difficulties encountered in securing convictions against known drug pushers and criminals. Mr. President, the work of the Justice Committee is of tremendous importance in today's society. We must dig deep to know what the weak links are in the system. Is it in the arrest stage? Is it in the investigation stage? Is it in the prosecutorial stage? Saan po ba nakakalusot ang mga kriminal? Bakit po tumatagal ng husto ang mga kaso sa korte? Bakit maraming nakakalusot sa asunto? Nakakakuha pa ba ng abogado ang mga mahihirap nating mga kababayan? Patas po ba ang laban o dehado ang ating mga kapulisan? Paano mapapabilis ang takbo ng ating mga kaso? Mr. President, throughout the conduct of the EJK hearings, many important realities and points were brought up, particularly about the state of our law enforcement agencies. We learned about delays in the issuances of search warrants. General De La Rosa said that the time a judge issues a search warrant varies greatly, ranging from 3 days to several months. This varying period hampers not just the PNP's anti-drug initiatives, but in fact their operations in general. We heard about the difficulties the PNP face with empowering their personnel. General De La Rosa also cited the lack of PNP training facilities. The Commission on Audit reports that the PNP needs 3,000 more vehicles, as those existing are either personally owned by the police or loaned from local government units. The Philippine National Police, or PNP, reportedly needs 18,000 short firearms and over 16,000 vehicles just to meet the ideal of 15-minute response of the 9/11 emergency service. Mr. President, we also learned that 8 out of 10 cases filed in PIDEA end up being dismissed, and that it takes, at the very least, a decade to convict those who are charged for illegal drugs. We should look into our colleague Senator Pangilinan's suggestion to convene the JELAC, or the Joint Judiciary Executive Legislative Advisory Council, to iron out issues and gaps to speed up and modernize the justice system. The Senate can lead, but it cannot fight the battle alone. Mr. President, the work of the Justice Committee is bigger than you. It is bigger than me. It is bigger than the President or the Chairman or any other senator, Mr. President. It should not be reduced to a game of my witness is better than your witness. Our work here should transcend our political affiliations, because what we do here today and tomorrow, though they do not necessarily echo through eternity, will certainly have lasting effect on the public and on our institutions. Tumitingala po ang taumbayan sa Senado para hanapan ng solusyon ang matitinding suliranin ng ating lipunan. A sad day indeed, Mr. President, if our people lose faith in the people who seek to protect them, and if our people do not wish to go through established institutions to seek redress. Let us focus, Mr. President, on making justice real for our people. Yung ramdam po talaga nila at ramdam din ng mga may masasamang balak na kung sila'y nagkasala, sila ay mapaparusahan. Let us work in the coming weeks and months and years to move our justice system in the right direction and to restore public trust in our institutions. Justice must be swift, it must be certain, it must be above suspicion. I am confident that we can do it, Mr. President. Kaya po natin yan. I look around the room and I see 2 former secretaries of justice who once were both eminent law practitioners. I look at the current chairman of the Committee on Justice, who labored for over 12 hours yesterday leading the committee. And I am reminded of his days as chairman of the Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority, when discipline was all around Subic Bay. Simpleng bagay, nirerespeto ng taumbayan ang speed limit dahil alam nilang mahuhuli sila. At kung mahuli, walang lusot dun sa police officer. I often see him beside our hardworking chair, the hardworking co-chair, the gentleman from Cavite, a former head of the Philippine National Police, who is also known for his no-nonsense approach. Add to this the brilliant presiding officer of our institution, Mr. President, who also previously chaired the Justice Committee. As I said earlier, the gargantuan task of reforming our justice system cannot be accomplished by this body alone. We will need the help of the other branches of government. Mr. President, the collective experience and wisdom of the aforementioned individuals, coupled with the idealism and energy brought by our young colleagues, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator J.V. Ejercito, is surely a great resource waiting to be tapped in the service of building better legal and judicial institutions. We remember the words of the late Senator Jose W. Diokno. Yet justice must somehow be done or attempted to be done if society is to hold together. The alternative would be anarchy or dictatorship, and having experienced both, we Filipinos want neither. The question of what justice is more than theoretical. It is imminently practical and urgent. Somehow we must seek to answer it, however short of the perfection our answer may be. This is why I rose today, Mr. President, because every little action we take within view of our countrymen can either elicit respect for or diminish trust in the Republic's hallowed institutions. I call on our colleagues, myself included, to exercise restraint, calm, sobriety, and mutual respect in all our dealings with each other, cognizant of the great purpose we are called upon to serve and to do justice to every Filipino. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Angara. Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we refer the speech of the gentleman from Aurora, Senator Sani Angara, to the Committee on Justice.
Any objection? Hearing none, the speech of Senator Angara is referred to the Committee on Justice.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 166.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 166 is in order.
May we ask Secretary to read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
Secretary, please do so.
A resolution commending and congratulating Doni Nietes, Mark Bagsayo, and Arthur Villanueva for winning the Pinoy Pride 38 held on September 25, 2016 at the StubHub Center in Carson, California.
Majority
Thank you.
Leader.
Mr. President, we would also like to consider Senate Resolution 176. Therefore, we are considering now what we have on the floor is PS Resolution 166 in consideration of PS Resolution 176 authored by Senator Joel Villanueva. 166 is authored by Senator Manny Pacquiao. Now, considering that Senator Manny Pacquiao, who is here, he is here present, the principal author of the resolution is requesting that his sponsorship speech be merely inserted in the records, and that Senator Joel Villanueva, co-author of the resolution and author of Senate 176, be recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech, Mr. President. So move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved, and Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized to deliver his sponsorship speech for Senate Resolution number 166, taking into consideration his own Senate Resolution number 176.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Isa pong napakalaking karangalan ang maghain ng Resolution number 176 dito sa Senado para kilalanin ang isa na namang atletang Pilipinong nagwagayway ng bandila ng Pilipinas sa larangan ng boxing. Ang boksingerong si King Arthur Villanueva mula sa Bacolod City, Negros Occidental, ang kasalukuyang may hawak ng WBO Asia Pacific Bantamweight Belt. Ito'y pagkatapos niyang mapatumba sa round 2 ng kanilang rematch ang Mexicanong si Juan Jimenez noong September 24 sa StubHub Center sa Carson, California, USA. Sa milyong-milyong mga manggagawang Pilipinong nakakalat sa iba't ibang bansa, lubhang kailangan natin ang mga Pilipinong kampyon sa iba't ibang larangan tulad ng boxing na isa sa pinakapaboritong sports sa buong mundo. Ang tagumpay ni King Arthur Villanueva sa boxing ay muling nagpalutang sa pangalan ng Pilipinas at sa tapang at galing ng Pilipino sa entablado ng mundo. Nag-angat din ito sa dignidad ng ating mga overseas Filipino workers at nagpatibay ng respeto ng ibang lahi sa kakayahan ng ating mga manggagawa. Mr. President, kaapelyido ko lang po si King Arthur Villanueva, pero tiyak kong pareho kami ng paniniwala kung magtitiwala sa sarili at magsisikap ng gusto, magiging kampyon ka, mananalo ka sa buhay. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt PS Resolution 166, taking into consideration Senate Resolution 176, subject to style.
There's a motion to adopt Senate Resolution number 166, taking into consideration Senate Resolution number 176, subject to style. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the Chamber again, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 167, taking into consideration Senate Resolution 177.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 167, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 177, is in order.
We ask the Secretary to read only the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
A resolution commending and congratulating Perlas Pilipinas for winning gold in the 2016 SIBA Women's Championship in Malacca City in Malaysia.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Manny Pacquiao, the principal author of 172, wishes to insert into the records his sponsorship speech. And I therefore move that Senator Joel Villanueva, the co-author of the resolution and author of Senate Resolution 177, be recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. The gentleman also from Aurora is a co-author of this resolution. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, for a basketball enthusiast like myself, I am very much delighted to sponsor a resolution commending and congratulating Perlas Pilipinas, the Philippine national women's basketball team, for winning the gold medal in the 2016 SIBA Women's Championship in Malacca City, Malaysia. The Southeast Asia Basketball Association, Mr. President, or SIBA, is a sub-zone of FIBA Asia consisting of countries from the region. And this is our second gold from SIBA Championship for women, Mr. President. The first was in 2010 when the tournament was staged here in Manila. Mr. President, these girls gave us reason why we should be proud as Filipinos and watch women's basketball more often. I couldn't agree more with their head coach, Patrick Aquino, that this win is a breakthrough for Philippines women's basketball. This win is also a shining opportunity for women's basketball in the country to get the same attention that men's basketball gets. Mr. President, gusto ko rin pong sabihin for the record na noong pong 1994, yung kauna-unahang Southeast Asian Basketball Association Tournament held in Johor, Malaysia, this representation actually represented our country in the very first SIBA basketball tournament. Subalit, hindi lang po gintong medalya ang premyo na nais nating ipahiwatig. Ang totoong premyo po ay ang lalong pagtaas ng estado ng women's basketball sa Pilipinas. Sa mga miyembro ng Perlas Pilipinas, alam kong ito ang laman ng kanilang mga puso at sana'y pumantay ang women's basketball sa men's basketball sa bansa. At makakaasa po ang ating mga atleta na kasama po nila tayo dito sa isyung ito. Ang totoong premyo ay ang inspirasyong hatid ng bawat isa sa kanila na huwag magbantulot na pasukin ang sports, humawak ng bola at abutin ang kanilang mga pangarap. Muli, Mr. President, salamat, kudos, and more power sa Perlas Pilipinas.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva.
Mr. President, I move to adopt PS Resolution 167, taking into consideration Senate Resolution 172 and 177, subject to style.
There is a motion to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 167, taking into consideration two proposed Senate resolutions, number 172 and 177, subject to style. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 170.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 170 is in order.
We ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary, please do so.
A resolution congratulating and commending the University of the Philippines Madrigal Singers for winning the grand prize and multiple awards in various categories of the 64th International Polyphonic Competition Guido de Arezzo, held last August 24 to 28, 2016 in Arezzo, Italy.
President, I move that Senator Ma'am Aquino be recognized, the principal author of the resolution, to sponsor the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senator Aquino is recognized.
Mr. President, magandang hapon po sa mga kasama po natin sa Senado. Yesterday, we were moved by the angelic voices of the world-renowned University of the Philippines Madrigal Singers. Today, it's my honor to address you, Mr. President, and my esteemed colleagues to commend some of our most talented young Filipinos with Senate Resolution 170, or a resolution congratulating and commending the University of the Philippines Madrigal Singers for winning the grand prize and multiple awards in various categories of the 64th International Polyphonic Competition Guido di Arezzo, held last October 24, 28, 2016 in Arezzo, Italy. Mr. President, once again, Filipinos wowed the international community with our musical talent and ability. Our homegrown Madrigal Singers from UP sang with both skill and heart to win the second prize in secular music and the Special Listening Committee Awards in folk song, pop, and Renaissance performances, as well as the first prize in the compulsory program Musica Sacra and monographic music categories. With their gift of music and their dedication to their craft, they won the grand prize of the 64th International Polyphonic Competition and now qualified to compete in the 2017 European Grand Prix for choral singing in Tolosa, Spain. Mr. President, we would like to note that the UP Madrigal Singers previously won this competition in 1997 and 2007 and is one of only 4 choirs in the world to win this award twice. We commend the UP Madrigal Singers in their recent victory and support them as they represent the Philippines next year. As chairperson of the Senate Committee on Education, Culture, and Arts, I am very happy to congratulate and commend these talented young Filipinos who continue to bring pride to our country. Mr. President, let's continue to encourage our youth to further develop their talents and be world-class. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Aquino.
Mr. President, I move to adopt PS Resolution 170.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 170 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 185.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 185 is in order.
As Secretary to read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
Secretary, please do so.
Resolution extolling the heroism and virtues of World War II martyr Wenceslao Q. Vinsons on occasion of his 106th birth anniversary.
I move that Senator Francis Pangilinan be recognized to sponsor the measure, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, Senator Pangilinan is recognized to sponsor PS Resolution number 185.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, 106 years ago, last Thursday, September 28, Wenceslao Vinsons was born in Indan, Camarines Norte. Wenceslao Vinsons was a high school class valedictorian. He took up law at the University of the Philippines and placed 3rd in the bar examinations of 1933. Wenceslao Vinsons was hailed as the father of student activism in the Philippines. While studying in the University of the Philippines, he was elected UP Student Council President, and he was also Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Collegian. Along with Narciso Alegre and future Senator and Vice President Arturo Tolentino, he founded the Young Philippines Party, a political party of youth leaders which advocated the grant of Philippine independence from American rule. At the age of 24, Mr. President, he was the youngest delegate to the 1934 Constitutional Convention. And he was instrumental in prescribing Filipino, then Tagalog, as the official language of the Philippines. In 1940, Mr. President, he was elected youngest governor of Camarines Norte, and he also eventually became the province's representative to the National Assembly. His services as a legislator was interrupted by the Japanese invasion of the Philippines in 1941. Mr. President, during the war, he organized an armed resistance in the Bicol region against the invading Japanese army, commandeered all the rice warehouses in his provinces, ordered their confiscation of explosives, and used the province's gold mines for use against the Japanese army. He led a raid against a troop of Japanese soldiers in Basud, Camarines Norte, and in May 1942, together with guerrilla forces, he successfully led the liberation of the provincial capital of Dair. Sometime, however, between 1941 and 1942, he was able to kill thousands together with his guerrilla unit of Japanese soldiers. And he became the most wanted man in the Bicol region. Mr. President, eventually he was captured in July 8 of 1942, together with his father. And despite being threatened with his death by Commander Major Tsuneoka Noburo, Wenceslao Vincents refused to pledge allegiance to his captors and pinpoint the location of Filipino and American guerrillas in the province, and instead responded, and I quote, "Nothing can make me happier than to die for my country. Major, you will die too." On July 15, 1942, Mr. President, the Japanese bayoneted him to death after his refusal to collaborate. Shortly thereafter, the Japanese also executed his father, his wife, his sister, and 2 of his children. To honor his memory, Mr. President, his hometown of Indan was renamed Vincents. And in the University of the Philippines, where I graduated, Mr. President, a number of edifices and buildings are named after him, particularly the Student Activity Center. Our Senate President is aware of this. The Student Activity Center houses the University of the Philippines Student Council as well as the Philippine Collegian. And this was called, and the building is called Wenceslao Vincents, or Vincents Hall. Therefore, Mr. President, I appeal to our colleagues to support this resolution and to approve this resolution to remember, celebrate, and extol the heroism and virtues of World War II martyr, youth, and student leader Wenceslao Vincents as a true paragon for the Filipino youth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Senate Resolution 185, subject to style.
Senator Gordon.
Mr. President, I got beaten to the draw by a younger Brad by the name of Senator Pangilinan. Senator Vincents has always been my hero. He was the youngest delegate to the Constitutional Convention of 1935, and I became the youngest delegate to the Constitutional Convention of 1971. Following into his footsteps, Mr. President, I've always advocated that he is one of the very, very sparsely recognized heroes of our country. In fact, I would even posit that he is a real live hero that our country should really honor. Not only was he a hero in every sense of the word because he died for his country. It's not important to die for your country, but for what you stood. As a young man, Wenceslao Vincents was a leader par excellence. He was a student leader who debated with Marcos, who debated with Quezon. He, along with others, posited Mafilindo, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. He proposed Bahasa as the national language because at that time we could not agree on the national language, whether it be Tagalog, Hiligaynon, or Visaya, or whatever. He dared, Mr. President. Heroes dare. When he dares, it is important that he be studied by many generations from where he stood, so that they would be able to understand the life that he led in our country. Mr. President, he became the youngest delegate and later on congressman and later on governor. When the Japanese arrived, as my good colleague stated, he fought back the Japanese and recovered the province of Camarines Norte from the Japanese. And then, Japanese sent troops and tried to capture him. He could not be captured. Finally, when he got captured, there are all kinds of rumors, and legend has it that he was betrayed by one of the top leaders of this country. I spoke with the daughter-in-law of Wenceslao Vincents, who said he could not be identified because he had cropped his hair short, and he was really very dark, and it was somebody who came down, and I'm not really ready to stand up because that is part of the legend of the man. When he was incarcerated, he would flip notes outside his cell. They were trying to make him, like many leaders at the time,
collaborate with the enemy. After all, many of his confederates had already gone on to the other side and taken positions in the puppet government of the Japanese at that time. He refused, and he popped up messages and sent it out and said, "Fight on, Philippines." Eventually, when they could not convince him, he was finally taken one evening, and together with his family, his head was cut off, his family, his wife, some of his siblings, his father, his mother, even the maid were killed by the Japanese. And the tragic thing about it was that nobody ever bothered to find out where he was buried. So up to now, we don't know where he was buried. All we know is that this man was eliminated from the face of the earth by the Japanese conquerors at the time. Mr. President, as Senator Pangilinan stated, and this is not my first time to speak here in this chamber, on San Wenceslao Vincents. We have Wenceslao Vincents Hall, of which I was privileged to be a member of the Student Council of UP at the time, and so is the Senate President, so is our colleague here. And we all know that many people go in and out of that place without knowing who Wenceslao Vincents is. That is the paucity. That is the sparseness of the information about this man. We dare call a building after him, and yet many of the young people and young women in this country don't even know who he is. And that is the problem, Mr. President. The message, I suppose, is to try and wake up the country and try to fill them and imbibe them with the spirit of self-abnegation, of selflessness, of courage under fire, of being able, like our heroes, make a decision and say, hey, we're overwhelmed by a mighty enemy. They have planes, they have cannons, and we only have the scopetas that were left to us by the Americans. And yet, he refused. He refused to be overcome by the mighty conqueror. September 28 is Vincent's Day. I tried to push it here in the Senate to make it a special day in the province. I would imagine that at some point in time, because there are too many other holidays, I think we should really identify him among the many heroes of National Heroes Day as a standout, because he is of modern vintage. He doesn't wear the garb during the Spanish era of Filipinos who wanted to be westernized with the, with the coat and the tails of Jose Rizal. Neither did he wear the sparse clothing of Lapu-Lapu, but he was one of us. The modern era of the Philippines, under the Commonwealth, youngest delegate, daring to speak against the people, the leaders of the time, on vital matters of the day. And so today, I just thought I'd stand up, and I thank Senator Pangilinan for his speech today. I'm glad that he is remembered, and I thought I'd lend my voice here as well. That has always been a personal commitment of mine. I did not point out that one of the contributions that I feel very, very humble, I would have been able to build a bigger monument to him so that people will know in the university we put in a bust of Wenceslao Vincents at the entrance of the university so that people would at least have a face. You see, sometimes we create faceless people out of our heroes. They are not faceless. They have families. They have commitments like us. And yet, sabi nga nila, no todos dormían en la noche de nuestros abuelos, an oft-quoted quote, which means there were those who kept vigil in the night of our forefathers. We celebrate Wenceslao Vincents Day today. And as I speak on Wenceslao Vincents, especially with what happened last night, and I dare say I would have wanted to do a privileged speech right now. I will probably do it tomorrow. We should remind ourselves of the greatness of people like Wenceslao Vincents, a legislator par excellence. But we should also remember that today is the birthday of Joker Arroyo. And Joker Arroyo passed away in San Francisco. No, I'm sorry, not the birthday, but it is the death anniversary. 1 year ago today, Joker Arroyo died quietly in San Francisco. And the family, at per Joker's request, did not even request or did not even accept an offer by the Senate to have honors given to him. In fact, he just, as they say, moved on into the great beyond, quietly. Of course, being a maverick, I threw a party for him at the Red Cross building, the new one. and I said, in violation of Fairley's wishes, Fairley is his wife, I invited them, and at that day, we were celebrating the gift of Joker, which we arranged with the Germans, a gift of a modern ambulance to the Philippine Red Cross. And he did this when he was no longer a senator. Joker was a great Filipino, a great guy, if you will. Can you imagine, during martial law, he was an Upsilonian, Marcos was an Upsilonian, Benigno Aquino was an Upsilonian, and that doesn't really mean anything because Upsilonians should not crow about it. They should do what the fraternity teaches them. Just because you're an Upsilonian doesn't mean you're a great man. But Joker was one of the principal lawyers who spoke out, who argued many cases against the Marcos regime. So much so that I'm told that his bufete, or his law office, was even burnt. And Joker never ceased to do that. Of course, when they saw each other, they called each other brothers. Same way Mr. Aquino and Mr. Marcos called each other brothers. But the point here that I'm trying to say, Mr. President, is that he was a man who was a lawyer par excellence, and then when he became congressman and became senator, he stood up, head above shoulders among many of us. He would stand quietly there and listen to the debate, sometimes with his eyes closed. But when he spoke up, everybody listened. I was not here, and I was not privileged to see him when he was the prosecutor on the case of President Estrada. Everybody has to make decisions, and sometimes these are not easy decisions. After all, as I've always said, in the pyramid of this country, when you grow up and you are at the base of the pyramids, everybody are friends. And as you go tighter into the apex of the president, the leadership corridor of this country, the corridor tightens up, and you tend to bang shoulders or bang heads with your confreres who grew up with you. To Joker, it was not a matter of personality, it was a matter of principle. And he stood up, as he stood up with President Marcos. Certainly, President Estrada was a very likable man, but Joker had his principles, and he prosecuted Mr. Estrada at the time. But then, when the new dispensation took over and he was senator here, you will recall that he was one of the 3 senators that stood up against the barreling, the charge against the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Renato Corona, and he dared say, no, I'm not going to vote for his impeachment. You know, I was also chagrined at the time when I heard, you know, the previous administration say that they were not going to listen to the Supreme Court. Remember that President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo was leaving, and the Supreme Court allowed her, but for some reason or another, she was prevented. And by sleight of hand, I suppose, they prevented Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo from leaving. Now, that's her problem. But to me, the essence, as well as the Joker, was the fact that you do not disobey the Supreme Court of the land. Because that is the thread that unites us. That is the last resort of this country. When the Supreme Court interprets the law, we follow. Joker stood his ground all the way to the end. When he stood up, and together with a couple of other senators, including the late Miriam Defensor Santiago, they voted no. And, not easy, but they did. But Joker was that type of a man. And when you look at Joker, he was always a thoughtful person, a man of great humor. I remember when I came in here one day wearing a Coast Guard uniform. I was made an admiral in the auxiliary, and I had just gotten a medal, and I was late because they had given me a ceremony, and I didn't have time to change. I didn't want to be late for the roll call. And Joker turned his swivel chair around, just like my good friend Senator Soto just did. I suppose I got his attention. As Joker did, I got his attention as well. And when Joker turned around, he said, he squinted the only way Joker could. And as he squinted, he said, Mr. President, there's somebody here whom I don't hardly recognize. You know, I hardly recognize. And he said, it looks like Senator Gordon. And he's in a military uniform. And he seems to be out of uniform, Mr. President. And Mr. President, we have rules here in the Senate that when you come here, you either wear a barong or a suit. And I said, Mr. President, I take it in great humor that my bride is here. But I said, Mr. President, the one who is not in uniform is a distinguished gentleman from Bicol. Because and I said, no, I'm in uniform, I'm wearing a barong. And I said, Mr. President, that is not the issue. He is not in full uniform. The gentleman is not wearing socks. And everybody had a big laugh at that time. And Joker, like the man he was, we had a lot of laughs here. There were many times, I'm sure you know about the Wednesday Club with Kiko Pangilinan and Manny Villar and Ralph Recto, and they would have good meetings. I had the privilege of joining them there at the Hyatt, no? At the Hyatt. Later on, they moved out to there. Wednesday lunches where they would meet and talk about the issues of the time. But let me just say that when you look at when he had gone already from the Senate, one day he called me and said, let's have dinner, and he invited me to be with him at that time and introduced to me an old family friend of his from Germany. The name is Joseph Lederer. Joker had solicited on behalf of the Philippine Red Cross at my prodding an ambulance from Joseph, a Mercedes-Benz no less. Prior to that, he had also facilitated the donation of a plane load of relief goods for disaster victims for Haiyan. And this is Joker out of office already. And one of the best gifts I ever had in my life. And he would kid me about the fact that he would tell me, you have your own corporation. I said, what corporation? He said, the Red Cross is your corporation. I said, no, it belongs to the whole world. And he gave me a coin that is treasured, that very few people have anymore. It was a 25th anniversary coin of the Philippine Red Cross since 1947. So Joker Arroyo was very thoughtful, was always mindful of the advocacies of his friends. He was a great friend. He was a teacher to many of us. And he was a devoted husband to Feli, whom he not only doted on and loved as a wife, but with whom he shared many intellectual and substantial exchanges, herself also being a lawyer. He's a great father who raised 3 accomplished daughters. I used to kid him, it takes a man to make another man. One a TOIM awardee for science, the next a fantastic and loving homemaker and mother, and the younger Joker, lady called Joker, a bemedaled equestrian who has proudly and successfully represented the Philippines in countless international competitions. And in fact, I think she graduated from Yale. He was an astute lawyer who brought his intelligence and acumen to the halls of the House of Representatives and the Senate. He brought quality debate and a lot of humor and discussion to our midst. Patiently endured the occasional stubborn or incorrigible colleague without disrespecting them. And that's where he really shines. There was no disrespect when he spoke. There were no barbed comments about one another, but rather wry remarks that he could dish out au natural. And let me just say, Mr. President, he still emerged immensely successful despite roadblocks put on his way. I'm sure he was frustrated. He was the lawyer Benigno Aquino, but later on he was the executive secretary. But for some reason, they had a quarrel. I don't know if it's a quarrel or a misunderstanding. I remember when the bill on creating a district in Rizal happened, former President Benigno Aquino III refused to accept it. And I spoke to him and I said, this is a man who worked for your father and mother, you should give him that break. And of course, Noy refused, but then we got it passed. And he never gloated about it. He never talked about it. He won, but he never gloated. He fought for what he believed in and was never cowed by power or threats or opposition. He was uncompromising in his integrity and was an honorable gentleman throughout. We call each other here the gentleman from Aurora, the gentleman from San Juan, or the gentleman from Bulacan, or the gentleman from Iloilo. And we all must act the part in the tradition, perhaps, of Vincent's, or for that matter, Joker Arroyo. He was uncompromising in his integrity, many times misunderstood as well, but then that is what life is all about. Sometimes you take positions and people don't understand you. But the real man is the man who stands by his principles. Win or lose, no, it's not the school we choose, as the Ateneo hymn goes, And the UST graduate here is kidding me about it. So although UST is a Dominican school, but Joker, yes, he came from the Ateneo as well, but that doesn't mean anything. Again, we're not elitist, but let me just say that he was uncompromising in his integrity and was an honorable gentleman throughout. And so today, let us remember Joker, a great patriot from Bicol, a freedom fighter, a champion of democracy, a friend, a brother, a colleague in the Senate. May his memory be an example to us who are left here to do the job of doing right by our people against all odds and at any cost. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the previous question was the approval of Senate Resolution 185. Now, may I withdraw my motion first? I withdraw the motion, Mr. President.
Any objection? Motion is withdrawn.
I move that the manifestation of Senator Gordon be referred to the Committee on Rules for a proper resolution tomorrow for Senator Joker Arroyo, Mr. President.
All right. So referred.
Thank you. Now I move to adopt Senate Resolution 185, Mr. President, on former Senator Winson's and making Senator Gordon a co-author and co-sponsor of the measure, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Section 33 of Republic Act 9275 or the Philippine Clean Water Act, Section 11 of RA 9175 or the Chainsaw Act, Section 30 of Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, and Section 53 of the Philippine Clean Air Act, I'd like to manifest the following members to represent the Senate in the following joint congressional oversight committees. For the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Clean Water Act, Senators Villar as chair, Senators Legarda, Ejercito, Cayetano, and Pacquiao as members.
So noted.
For the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Chainsaw, Senator Cynthia Villar as chair, Senators Honasan, Gordon, Pangilinan, members. For minority, Trillanes and Escudero, Mr. President.
Approved.
For the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, Senators Cynthia Villar as chair, Senators Legarda, Ejercito, Angara, Escudero, members.
Noted.
For the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Clean Air Act, Senator Cynthia Villar, chair, Senators Subiri, Aquino, Villanueva, Binay as members.
Noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. One final housekeeping. With the consent of the body, after conferring the matter with the respective committee chairs, I move that we transfer the primary referral of Senate Bill 812, an act instituting the grant of teaching supplies allowance for public school teachers and appropriating funds, therefore, from the Committee on Education to the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation. The bill shall then be secondarily referred to the Committee on Education.
Any objection?
Thank you.
Hearing none, change of the referral is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, October 5, 2016.
Session is adjourned until Wednesday, October 5, 2016 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.